This podcast is brought to you by Craft Beer and Brewing Magazine for those that love to make and drink great beer. Learn more online or subscribe at beerandbrewing.com or find us on social media at Craft Beer Brew. River Drive Cooperage sources unique barrels from around the world. Working with select suppliers and their own cooperage, they ensure quality, consistency, and control over your barrel program. Custom oak alternatives, barrel aging consulting, and cooperage education are just a few more one-of-a-kind services they're proud to provide. River Drive Cooperage, not just a barrel company. Browse their online warehouse at barrelsdirect.com and use the coupon code PODCAST10, that's podcast with a number 10, to get 10% off your next order.
Hi, everybody. It's John Hall, the senior editor of Craft Beer and Brewing Magazine. I'm in a hotel lobby in our nation's capital because it is Savor Weekend, which is the Brewers Association's pairing dinner extravaganza where they bring brewers from around the world and they pair, or from around the country, I should say. I'm sure people come from around the world, but brewers from around the country come to D.C. to showcase their beers alongside some really great food. And it talks about the wonders of pairing a good beer with some good food. And a guy who knows a lot about good beer, at least, and I'm sure you know a little bit about good food.
I eat a lot of it. Yeah.
Is Patrick Rue. He is the founder and now the CEO of the Bruery, of Offshoot Beer Company, and of Bruery Is that the right way of saying it? I always get tripped up on the...
Yeah, well, everything has Rue. Pretty much almost anything we do has Rue in the name, so True.
Okay.
True sounds way better, though.
Is it
sounds classier.
Offshoot? Is that how you guys do it? Is that...
yeah, exactly. No, I haven't
gone... say everything you do, and then...
Yeah, we almost named Rue the Day.
Did you really?
Yeah, I'm like, no, it's too much.
Maybe the next morning after a couple of double IPAs. I had one of yours last night, a triple dry hopped double IPA that you guys did a collaboration with
Virgin.
Yeah.
Called So Good. Not sure why we named it that.
The morning was difficult because
Sorry
of
about
that. Patrick, as you well know, is a master of barrel-aged beers. He's also a master cicerone. And I want to start there because you were an early adopter of Cicerone. And I read an interview. You were one of the first masters. You were Master Cicerone. You were like 8 or 9, depending on...
Yeah.
Okay. James might say 8. Like you and James want from
we were both
Brewdog.
at the same time, yeah.
And the press release was interestingly worded where it was numbers 8 and 9, and it was, well, which one is which? And it's sort of, Ray lets you figure it out and duke it out.
Yeah, well, my certificate has 8 on it.
Oh, well, there it is.
Yeah.
All right.
So I'm not, I think he scored higher than me, but they gave me the 8 anyway. I don't know why. Maybe R becomes before W, so maybe it's just alphabetical order.
But you said you wanted to take the exam because you wanted to excel at something exam-based that you were passionate about. And I want to get into that because originally you were in law school and you graduated from law school. Did you take the bar?
I did take the bar, yeah.
Okay. And you passed the bar, so you're...
No? Thankfully I did not pass.
Really?
Yeah.
And so you were one and done with it?
Yeah, my mom really wanted me to try that one again, but there's no way.
So is that where Cicerone then came in, where you wanted to have some sort of accomplishment then? Or unpack that quote for me, where you wanted to have an exam-based certification.
Yeah, well, I've always been a pretty mediocre student. Large part of that just because I didn't really care about what I was studying. So I wanted to challenge myself that if I really, did something that's knowledge-based, very objective exam, can I achieve the highest level, even though I suck at taking exams and studying in general.
How long was it when you took the exam from when you had first started homebrewing?
Let's see, I first started homebrewing in 2003, and I passed the exam in, I think it was 2014.
Okay, so you had some miles under your belt at that point.
Yeah, definitely.
What was it about studying for Master Cicerone? Because I know that there are folks who are taking it right now. It is one of those holy grails for a lot of folks. It's that brass ring that they want to grab. In that same interview, you said you're not sure if that you'd do it again.
Yeah.
Is that still true? And now that you're removed from it even further, would you try to level up even more now that there's the new fancier one? Or there's the middle one, I guess, right?
Right, the advanced, yeah.
But is there a level up now from you guys?
There isn't, no.
Oh, so
but that
you
would
guys
be
are the
really
highest.
interesting if they did.
Would you
like
study
the Grandmaster?
Would you study for that? Would you try to achieve that?
Yeah, I probably would. I learned a lot while I was studying, even though I'm around beer every day and, around different parts of it. It really forces you to study beer, the cultural significance of beer, the scientific, pretty much everything that goes into making beer, serving beer. It just looks at every angle, and something that most people in the beer industry only handle one part.
How is that? Because that's the interesting thing, right? I think people get into beer making like, oh, I'm just going to make beer. How has your breweries changed since taking that certification, since taking that test, in the way that you've approached the business?
Yeah. Well, I've always really respected style, even though we don't make beers that are stylistic. I feel like you need to.
I was going to say it's yeah.
You need to know what the styles are before you can even attempt to not break them, but skirt around them. Like I'm drinking a Vienna lager right now. If I didn't know styles, I'd be like, one day I want to make like an amber lager, and it's one there's a little bit of a bready hint to it, and I'm going to invent it, and then
and then you discover like, this is a style.
Yeah.
You bring up an interesting point, and I was going to get to this at some point, but you do a lot of beers and have been doing them for a while that would classify in modern parlance of pastry stout, or these adjuncty stouts, these flavored concoctions. And I think that, and I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this, because a lot of folks who, maybe I'm painting with too broad a brush, there are breweries that make those types of beers who have never made an actual stout, or haven't made a porter, or don't know the difference between a dry Irish stout and a foreign extra stout, or a proper North English porter, South English porter. They don't know the difference. They're just saying, well, I'm making a dark roasty beer and now I'm going to throw a ton of shit in it.
Right.
How important was it for you in those early days to at least have the understanding of base styles that you could build off of?
Yeah, I think it's really important. I guess it makes you realize that a lot of progress has happened in beer before you got into it, and that you're not, in the whole grand scheme of things, you're a little dot on the map in the world of beer. And when you can take something delicious that somebody else has made and just put your own touch on it, for the sake of either constant improvement or just constant innovation, and hopefully some improvement along the way. I think it's just really important to know how that beer style came to be, and how you can put your own spin on it, but also be respectful to the style.
Did you fool around with base styles when you first started off? Do you remember what your first homebrew recipe was?
Yeah. It was a clone of Mirror Pond Porter.
Okay.
Or Mirror Pond Pale Ale, excuse me. Had too many beers last night. And which is a delicious beer, Cascade focused. So I used, I wanted it to be more caramely, because I thought, caramel's delicious. So I put a bunch of crystal malt into it, which did not make the beer better. And then used a lot of Cascade. I fermented it for about 3 days, and it seemed like it was, slowing down. So I put it into a keg and rolled it across my garage floor to carbonate it. About 3 hours later, my brother and I were drinking this chunky amber ale.
Wow.
That it was nothing like Mirror Pond, but not seriously bad.
So hold on, your very first homebrew batch, you were already coloring outside of the lines.
Yeah, that was a bad idea.
Well, what did that teach you?
That simplicity is sometimes the best answer. You can. We've made a lot of beers that are just extremely simple that can be, some of the most amazing.
I don't think of your beers as simple, though.
No, they aren't. Well, we make a lot of different beers, so some of them have it might be a very simple base malt, but a very, complex way of dry hopping, or a complex fermentation with, Brettanomyces and bacteria. So we try not to make it simple on ourselves, but sometimes it's nice to have one element that's simple to it.
Is it frustrating, though, when you're saying that you're making a whole bunch of different beers, and obviously you are, but the ones that get the fans excited, the ones that get the lines out the door, or people hiring mules to go stand in line, or who sign up for your bottle club, and everything in between, it's always the super rare, the super exotic, the super. It's got to be great on some level, because, and on many levels, I imagine, because one, your brewery is successful because of it, and it's known around the world because of it. Do you ever wish now and again people would give you the same sort of love for a pale ale, for just a stout, and could the brewery succeed with just those beers, with just like a plain style?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I don't think so. I mean, I think volume-wise, we could certainly produce, more simplistic, style-appropriate beers and be successful on a volume basis. But I think trying to fit that into everything else that we do, that people always expect, they expect to be surprised from us, and that would surprise them in not that good of a way. And there's a lot of breweries making really cool, just style beers, and let them do it.
If you guys were to open today, do you think you'd have the same focus that you do? Because there are so many people making flavored stouts and barrel-aged beers and messing around with sours and Brettanomyces and fruit. And were you guys a lucky product of your time who also made great beer? Or I don't know, have you thought about, if you were to open in mid-2018, could you even open in mid-2018?
Yeah, no, I wouldn't have done what we were doing, I don't know. I feel the need to always be different than the rest of the crowd, and I think we were different when we started, and now there's more and more breweries doing things that are similar to us, so we're not as unique as we once were. We're always looking for ways to make ourselves unique, but I don't know, like. The idea of like having a brewery where you just make like one Czech lager, sounds pretty appealing right now. That would be different.
You could call Lars Larson's up at Trumer.
I know.
Just, go intern for him. Or
Definitely.
Just do a Czech Pils all day long. That'd be great.
Have a brewer work there, and certainly that approach is pretty amazing.
Well, you've launched other beer projects based on off other breweries based off of the original one. I mean, what's to stop you from doing something like that down the road?
I don't know. Confusing people by having too many brands. So it keeps me from doing that.
All right. So when you're talking to folks and you're saying, okay, I have 3 breweries with 3 different names, how do you put them into each bucket? Like, how do you describe each of the 3? I
usually just tell people I'm from the brewery and leave it at that. But
and when they say which one,
say if I'm giving,
oh no, it's my family name, and then it's
right,
yeah.
Totally.
Does that conversation get old? Like when you say you're from the brewery and people say which one?
Which one? Hasn't happened in a while.
Really?
People are getting it now,
okay.
Which is nice. It's weird.
I don't get out much, so this is like the most human interaction that I have during my week most of the time. So yeah,
that's it. When I take people around the brewery, I explain. We have Bruery a few miles away where we make all of our sour and funky beers. Everything we do is made on one brew house. And then they ask, where's Offshoot made? I'm like, oh, right here. So while having 3 different brands makes it seem like we have 3 different locations, we really just have 2 locations, if that makes sense.
So Offshoot, though, specializes in mainly hoppy beers, right?
Yeah.
I'm not wrong on that, right?
It's done mostly hazy IPAs and double IPAs at this point, with a few West Coast IPAs and some lagers as well, or hoppier lagers.
Where did that idea come from? Was that born out of necessity? Was Offshoot like if we need to, grow in the marketplace, we need to have hazy beers, or we need to have at least an IPA. Take haze out of it for a second. Like right. IPA makes money, and I think everybody needs to realize that it's the most popular category in craft right now. Right. It's if you're a brewery without one, people kind of look at you funny. Was this born out of looking at a balance sheet? Was this born out of people saying like, "Hey man, where's your IPA?" Was this born out of something else altogether?
Yeah. So a few different things. Everybody at the brewery drinks IPAs. They were just drinking somebody else's IPA. So I was kind of tired of, I don't always want to drink a big imperial stout or a really sour beer when I have a nice beer at home. So
Sure.
having something that we can open up all the time was really appealing. The 750 format or 750 milliliter format, big bottle, has lost quite a bit of steam. So for us, it was I think really important to expose ourselves to to a wider group of customers. By going into the canned IPAs, we're able to reach a lot more people and kind of bring them into the Bruery family and introduce them to other things along the way, and maybe they can go back to buying 750s at some point.
So I want to unpack this just a little bit. So
Sure.
Offshoot, when you're saying that everything early on has sort of the Rue name to it and then Offshoot doesn't,
Yeah.
how do you tie that back to? How do you tie Offshoot back to what you're doing with the other two entities?
Yeah, we at this point we treat it as its own little animal. That's the only thing that really ties it in branding wise is Familial Rue. Familial Rue is somewhere on the packaging. Usually it's disguised or blended into a background on Offshoot. And then for Relax, which is our first distributed release, we put on the side of the can, brewed between our friends at the brewery.
Okay.
So we want people to think of them as different attitude, different philosophies entirely, but want people to also know that it comes from us. And if you want to buy some more,
Sure.
here's where you go.
You mentioned that you're doing hazy IPA, that you're doing milkshakes, you're doing New England style, whatever people want to call it.
Yeah.
Again, I go back to, had you started this 5 years ago or 10 years ago, you wouldn't have been doing that style. You sort of put your finger on the pulse of, hey, here's what's happening right now with that style.
Yeah.
You obviously must like these beers, or at least see potential in them. And I know that there's haters on, and proponents on both sides of this coin. I'm
Right.
imagining you're a proponent because you're making these beers.
Yeah.
But as somebody who thinks about stylistic heritage and thinks about some of the early, where we came from, essentially, in beer, these beers are sort of the antithesis of that. Would you make just a normal Sierra Nevada-esque pale ale? I mean, can anybody actually do that anymore? Or is the new generation of drinkers saying, no, we don't want to be able to see through it? You must have done some sort of market research into all of this. You guys are fairly smart.
Yeah. Well, just as far as being a fan of the style, I definitely am. When I first saw breweries making these beers, it definitely made me cringe, especially when you see this kind of brownish, grainish tinge to the beer.
Mm-hmm.
But then as I got to try them, as we started making them, I don't know. It's not about, for me, it's not about what it looks like. It's about how it tastes and the texture. It also kind of harkens back to, the wit beer style or the German Hefeweizen style. Like, these are also turbid styles.
Yeah, but there's a difference between a proper German Hefeweizen and the turbidity of an IPA, of a New England IPA.
No, definitely have a point there.
I mean, haze is one thing, and then there's sludge on the other. And again,
Right.
and I agree with you that when I find the ones that I like, and some of the beers that you guys have had, you had a series that came out, Taste That Taste, Smell That Smell, that was in the from Offshoot, and I really dug those beers when they came out.
Oh, cool.
And I thought that they had a lot of the great characteristics to them. Garrett Oliver, though, said, and this is fascinating because you said that you're not going to focus on looks too much, but Garrett Oliver has gone on the record and said the New England IPA is the first Instagrammable ready beer, that people want to take pictures of these, cell phone pictures of these beers that capture all light around them, that look like yeast slurry in a glass kind of thing, and they're guaranteed to get 1,000 likes from their friends in the process. So on some level, the look is so important for these beers, but you're saying that for you, you're not focusing on that. And so I wonder, is there a different way to be thinking about these beers than, and can you, I guess, is there a different way to think about these beers, and can we actually remove the visual from them without, having to keep our eyes closed throughout an entire drinking session?
Yeah, I mean, we've certainly had some clear out on us, and they are very different beers when when you have the turbidity versus when you don't. Just the protein content and the mouthfeel is remarkably different. One thing I forgot to mention is so my mother-in-law is like the biggest fan of hazy IPAs.
Really?
Yeah, not a beer drinker generally. So I see that's becoming much more mainstream. It's someone, an American Hefeweizen with a nice squeeze of lemon in it would be something that would appeal to her previously, and now she can order a hazy IPA and be happy as a clam. So,
do you get jealous when you go to her house and you see it's a fridge full of Treehouse?
She hasn't gone that far. She just has the cases of offshoot that I drop off.
Is she trading them online for other cans? Is she open to trades?
I don't. Yeah, probably. I'll have to explain that to her, I think.
I imagine being in your family, though, if people could find and I'm not encouraging people to do this, so don't actually do this. I'm just making a joke. But like, people could actually really make some fantastic trades off of your family if they wanted to.
Oh yeah, definitely. They like the attention too, I'm sure.
Where do you fall on that?
Trading?
Yeah.
Well, I've done a lot of trading, so I enjoy being able to have beers that you can't get normally, and it's a special experience when even though, it's really fun when you can try something that's generally not available. Not sure why that's fun, but it is.
I imagine you as a brewer, though, could call up another brewer and say, hey, I'd love to try this beer. I don't know if you necessarily have to be trolling internet forums or,
Yeah, we trade with each other.
Right.
That's a nice way to go. Let's say for the hazier beers, I think the flavor is going to change a lot, especially if you're not able to keep it cold the entire way. And also, I really dislike when people ship crowlers or growlers if they haven't been purged and if they haven't been filled very well, which crowlers and growlers generally are not.
Right.
The beer is
even with the best equipment, it's still not.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, beer's going to degrade pretty fast. So beers that will hold up well for trades, awesome. But when it becomes a shell of itself and you start seeing your untapped ratings from people from far away, seeing those 2.5 ratings because the beer doesn't taste right because it got shipped incorrectly, that's painful.
And it is personal for you, though, right? When you see these things, because like you're not trying. I don't think any brewer is intentionally putting out a 2.5-star beer,
right?
And obviously, online ratings should always be taken with a grain of salt. I'm always amazed by the people on Untapped, and I've said this on this show and others as well. I'm giving this Kolsch 1 star because I don't like Kolsch. It didn't have enough hops, and it's like. You can't do that. Like you can't, but when it's a beer that was designed to be consumed either on your premises or nearby or within 2 weeks or wherever, and then it's showing up on a rating site 3 months later, halfway across the country, if not all the way across the country.
Yeah.
That's gotta. You have to take that personally on some level, but it's also out of your control.
Yeah. I would say when it gets to them and it tastes great, then I'm very happy. And when when there's a transit related cause of making it not taste as good, then it's disappointing but something that's totally out of my control. So don't worry about it.
How closely do you pay attention to consumer reviews? Have you guys changed beers in the past? To meet consumer expectations or hopes, or have you noticed even if a beer is the way that you want it to leave the brew house and being tasted the way that you want it to taste, and it's not scoring particularly well or not being particularly received? Have you guys changed beers in the past, or just
yeah, definitely. Out of our pilot brew house, we probably release 3 or 4, probably 3 new beers a week in our tasting rooms and kind of gauge feedback. And
how big is that system?
It's a 3-barrel system. So being able to see the Untapped scores is a really, really good metric for us on whether we want to scale up that beer or not. If it gets a 4 or over, then we know we're on a pretty good track. And then sometimes we ignore the points or whatever score it's given when it's just selling particularly well and you get some passionate customers. We have a beer called horchata that tastes like the Mexican rice drink horchata, going on tap, and it's 3.7 or something. Nothing spectacular, but when
if I look right now, it's probably 3.7. You seem like you're like obsessively looking at these things, like you actually know.
I know it's bad. I shouldn't, but I do. So when you talk to people in our tasting room, they say this is their favorite beer, and they're buying a case of it home, and then they come back the next week and buy some more. That's always a very good sign as well. So scores aren't everything, and sometimes the super beer geeks might not love it, but there's a large section of beer drinkers who do.
Is there a beer that you've made that you've been surprised, and I'll ask this two ways, hasn't scored well or been as well received as you as hoped, or that you were actually really surprised about that it exceeded expectations?
Yeah. Actually, since we're at Savor, we're actually pouring one of those beers. It's called Yount. It's a blend of, so we take grapes from Yountville and Napa, some Cabernet Sauvignon. We co-fermented that with Black Tuesday, put it in French oak barrels. We serve it still at kind of wine temperature, or cellar temperature, what you serve a nice bottle of red wine at. For me, it's one of the coolest beers we've ever made. And some people, we get a lot of negative scores on that one. We get more positive. I think it has a 4.2 or a little bit above that. But it's a mix of like. It's a mix of fives, and it's a mix of like
every time you're quoting numbers,
threes.
Greg Avola is standing up and just cheering right now. Yeah, from Untapped. Yeah,
but so people aren't, even though you think something's wonderful and a gift to the world, not everybody sees it that way. And sometimes people just want beer; they don't want things that that almost aren't beer but are. Does that make sense?
Well. It does make sense, but this is the interesting thing, is that we're getting so, I think, far removed from those original styles that we were talking about at the beginning of the show, of just the standard base styles of porter, stout, pale ale, even IPA, as well, that a lot of the beers that are being made these days and being produced, you don't always taste the beer. You don't always taste, the core ingredients. And I think that with the majority of your beers, at least, you can still tell that it's beer. You can still tell that it falls into that family. Is that important to you, or is it okay that we're sort of off into this new stratosphere of taste and boundary pushing and flavor pushing? Yeah,
I think there's a place for both. I think it's really exciting when you can get a really high quality beer to not taste like beer. It really annoys me when beers become similar, close to a wine cooler, or there's chemical flavorings. We're going into more into soft drink land than we are into a high end product. So we always we want to blur those lines, but we always want to keep it as high quality as possible and be kind of more of a culinary experience than oh wow, this tastes like Jolly Ranchers.
So when you're saying high quality and you're saying culinary, you guys actually use the real ingredients, right?
Right.
That's got to be a conscious decision, right? Because it doesn't always make financial sense.
Right. Yeah. That's true. Yeah. Yeah. I think it's interesting when you try, say, let's try 10 different coconut stouts. Many of them are going to be using a flavor extract, and a lot of consumers don't know that. They assume that if it says it's a coconut stout, then it's coconut stout. But when you've smelled those extracts and you notice the chemical aspect, and you can taste that in those beers where a lot of people just don't quite notice.
Well, coconut's an interesting thing, right? Because everybody thinks that coconut should actually taste like a Mounds Bar or an Almond Joy,
right.
And that's just not the case. It's so different. It's the same thing with watermelon. There's so many watermelon wheats that are out there, and all these other beers as well, and they taste like a watermelon Jolly Rancher.
Exactly.
And that's not what real watermelon, even the most flavorful, juicy thing, it's strawberries and all of these other things as well. How does how do your beers then, or how do you feel? I guess let me phrase it this way: when it comes to using real ingredients and to doing things in a culinary way, how does that help a beer stand out among the others?
Yeah, it doesn't always, which is unfortunate. I think for us, it's about integrity. It's about, I guess, a purity of flavor. And sometimes you can't achieve that over-the-top flavor that you might want. Going back to coconut and Mounds bars. But you know that you've done it the right way, that it tastes natural. Like, there's some flavors just you can't get through natural means. But I think you get the best and purest flavors through natural means.
Talk to me just a little bit more about that, though, because does it take convincing to the public saying, like, yeah, this is coconut, and people are saying, yeah, but it's not coconutty enough, or, this isn't, cinnamony enough, or, whatever it is that you're putting in there, because I think that we're so used to, as a general populace, used to extreme flavors or things to taste like what we think they should taste like as opposed to what they actually taste like.
Yeah, we don't advertise it very well, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, it would be probably a good thing for us to say, here's what a lot of brewers do and here's what we do. But putting down other, well, I guess I'm doing it on your podcast, but putting down,
nobody listens to this, so it's fine.
Putting down others to, boost yourself up is something that I don't like doing. But yeah, I guess educating the customer on how exactly we made this beer is something we like doing, and we don't necessarily have to bring other people into it, but sometimes the customer doesn't realize that this is the way you do it versus this is the way that other people might do it.
It helps you sleep well at night, though.
Yeah, definitely.
So we're at this interesting point in craft beer these days where people are talking about independence, and people are talking about a seal, and they're talking about knowing where their beer comes from. And you've been big on talking about the family brew in the business for a while.
Yeah.
Last year, 2017, you guys sold a majority stake to a private equity firm, which is not not the same as selling to an Anheuser-Busch or a Miller Coors or all of that.
Right.
But I also think that people are often confused about ownership in general, and I'm curious to hear your thoughts as to why that sale made sense, or why that transaction made sense, and what that actually means for the future of beer in general, both for the company that you founded and now CEO of, but what it means going forward to beer. Should ownership matter? Yeah,
that's such a tricky
I
area.
know it is, and we got time.
Yeah, no, it's a fun topic. So I guess for me personally, it was...
Most people just switched off. They're like, boring. I want to hear about Grey Wednesday. Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
I guess the motivations for why I sold part to a private equity firm. The company had grown to a point where very successful. There was opportunity to grow more, but I'd already put my house and my family's finances at risk for 10 years, and figured this is probably a good time to share that a little bit, and give opportunities for the people the employees who have gotten us here. I don't want to be a stagnant place, but I wasn't willing to kind of put any more risk out there. So it's a great way to achieve both of those angles of just financial security and still being able to continue to grow. Private equity is, I would think of it as more of a sophisticated investor.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we all have to, when we start breweries, we have to raise money, and most people have investors, and it could be a rich uncle, or it could be could be a university, or it could be there's all different types of or sources of money, I guess.
Yeah. And that's the thing. It's not necessarily the mom and pop shop that most people think it is. There is always, or usually, somebody who is bankrolling this. There's very few financially dependent people who are also mashing in every morning.
Yeah, no, it's true. For myself, thankfully my family was really behind it and able to get all the money from essentially my parents. But yeah, I would think of private equity as it's a collection of investors who are all putting their money together to invest in a bunch of different companies for growth, and it's not that different than any other sort of investment. I think once you sell to a large brewer, they have a strategic angle for your beer that goes beyond just making money off of it. It's about placing, having the shelves sets seem like you're offering choice, but really all you see is AB beer.
Yeah,
let's not. I guess we shouldn't mention particular.
No, you can. I mean, that's fine though, because I think that is a true thing. The sales to or by those larger brewers are strategic. And whether or not we've seen what that strategy is fully realized yet. And I think that there's people who read the tea leaves and try to figure it out, and we still haven't seen the full impact of it just yet. But by getting an influx of cash, by getting a deep-pocketed uncle, as it were, in this whole thing, it does set your brewery up for the next phase, right?
Yeah. Once you go into partnership, the expectation is you grow. So,
and you have. I mean,
yeah.
the brewery's grown. We're here in D.C. It's worth pointing out that when a few years ago everybody was looking to grow their businesses, a lot of West Coast breweries actually came to the East Coast, but they set up, they poured concrete and they laid down stainless, and they opened up a second brewery. And in some cases it's worked out really well, like Sierra Nevada. In other cases it's stalled, like Deschutes and Roanoke. In the most extreme cases, we've seen Green Flash losing their brewery, selling to Mitch Steele and his group with New Realm. You guys came east, but you just opened up a storefront.
Yeah.
And I don't mean that in a dismissive way, but it's such a simple idea that it's like, oh, how come more people haven't done this? So, one, how did it come together? And two, how's it playing out? Like, what's its purpose?
Yeah. So we did it because we have a good following on the East Coast. This D.C., Maryland, Virginia market is our second best market outside of California, and we're able to find a legal way of doing this. With most states, you have pretty good separation between a manufacturer, a distributor, and a retailer. And at this particular spot that we have in D.C., we're kind of blending all three of those together.
Well, it's a lawless area.
Yeah, it's pretty unusual. So we're able to. The big part is getting the members that we have out here, keeping them and keeping them happy, and growing that membership base. So essentially, we make a lot. We make, say, 5 different beers a month that we release primarily to our members, and this is a way for us to legally get that out here. And at the same time, just build develop more recognition for our brand in general.
When you're talking about, and you can learn more about the shop through the website as well, and it has all the particulars on there. But I want to get into membership a little bit before we start to wrap up here, because I'm really curious as to if you guys are doing 5 different beers a month, if you guys are, you're really sort of feeding a machine at this point. You're feeding a beast at this point. And if you're in it, it's worth the money. I've been the recipient of a lot of those beers thanks to generous friends who have deep pockets. From your end of things, is it stressful to keep that momentum going? Is it exciting to keep it going? Is it?
Yeah, it's interesting. It's balancing like. So, you've never been a member before, but you want, Grey Monday, you want these beers that have been released in the past. So it's about...
that was nice to correct me, by the way. Thank you.
It's about giving them what they want, being a first-time member versus someone who's been a member for 8 years, and they've seen 8 different releases of a beer like Chocolate Rain. Do they really want that again? I don't know. So having to constantly innovate and do some new things, which we personally love. So for me, it's hard to kind of balance releasing things that have worked well in the past versus let's create something new that our customers may or may not love.
What's the innovation process like at the brewery?
So it starts with a bunch of random ideas, and then choose the good ones, or what we think are good ones. We brew it on the 3-barrel pilot system. We'll taste it internally, see if it's good enough to put on the tap room. If it is, then we'll put it up in the tap room, usually under some random name, and we don't develop any of the branding at that point.
Yeah.
Kind of gauge our customers' reaction, and go from there. And slot it into whenever we want to release it. And a lot of our stuff's barrel aged, so we'll brew it and release it generally 12 months to 16 months after that.
I want to figure out where to go here because has there been beers that you guys have bet around that you've talked about that were just not ready for prime time that you saw, oh man, there's a nugget in here and we just don't know what it is, so let's put a pin in it for now. Mm-hmm. And then you come back to it and it's still not ready or it's still not fully conceptualized, and then has there been a beer that has been an exceptionally slow burn?
Boy, that's a good question. Yes, I know there's a lot of random projects that we have hanging out in barrels.
Yeah.
We made them without any real idea of what we were going to do with them. So those are always challenging. Like, whatever that great idea was a year ago, is that still a good idea now? And we got to figure out what to do with this. So,
because you get to a certain point, right, where the beer's either going to be ready or it's not.
Right.
And then how have you developed I've talked to other folks who manage barrels because a lot of it is uncharted territory, especially if you're using fresh ingredients or you're using different ingredients or you're trying different things. It's this sort of, oh, now I know it's ready, as opposed to 6 weeks ago it wasn't, or, I don't think it's going to be better 6 weeks from now.
Right.
How have you developed that sense? How have you had that? Like, I don't even know if it's something that everybody can do, or is it?
So we try to follow a calendar. So we'll put something into a barrel, and then we'll assume that we've given enough time that when we go to taste those barrels, that they'll be as we want them to be. Mm-hmm. When they aren't, we'll have to make the decision of whether we, kick that release down the road, or whether we move ahead with it. And usually if it's not ready, we're not going to move ahead.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's always good to have something, a backup. I love being 3 or 4 beers ahead. So if this one doesn't work out, I have something else that I can swap in. I think that's the best way. And big thing is for our sour program over at Bruery. A lot of these beers take a long time in the bottle, so they'll taste great coming out of the barrel. Put them into a bottle. A week later, they develop, a huge amount of diacetyl, this buttery sort of flavor, and sometimes it takes 6 months to go away. So you have to be patient, and it's hard to achieve your goals sometimes when you have to keep that in mind. But it's really important.
And you mentioned that when you put some of these beers out, you're not putting them out under what will be their final name as well. You guys have some pretty standout names for your beers. Do you guys just have a list going? Is it does each one get new consideration, or is it just hey, this kind of feels like this thing we've had on the posted up on the wall for a little while. Let's pull that one down.
Yeah, no, we don't have a good way of naming beers. It's always. There's always a lot of opinions.
Do you have final say?
Usually, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, if usually I have final say as long as people like it. If people don't like it, you can see the looks on their face. And if I'm in a room with 5 people and I'm the only one who likes it, then I think I'm the wrong person. Then, yeah, I'll listen.
Okay.
Try to anyway.
Chocolate Rain, was that born off of the internet video?
Yeah.
It's probably been more lasting. Your beer has been more lasting than that guy's career.
I know. Yeah, big fan of that song if he's listening.
Well, sure, but of course, it's he's live at the brewery whenever he's in town, I'm sure. But
right.
When you look at something like that, where you grabbed what was happening in the moment and threw it on a beer name, do you look back on it now and be like, oh man,
that was just silly?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Totally. Yeah, I mean, a lot of people don't even know. A lot of people are drinking Chocolate Rain today. Aren't even aware of that video. So
if you are one of those people, go to your YouTube and type in Chocolate Rain, and you're not going to get Patrick Spear. You're going to get a guy singing into a microphone, and it's it was an early viral video.
Yeah. We were that came up because we had made Chocolate Rain. We made that beer. It was just in a cask for our Black Tuesday release, and we were hanging out at Steph Bruery. She was our kind of lead bartender. I think lives in your neck of the woods these days. Our tasting room manager. Anyway, she's like, "Oh, you have to watch this Chocolate Rain video," and I just started busting up and. Okay, we needed to name a beer that. Okay, we did put chocolate in that beer. Okay,
so there it is.
That's the name,
and that's the way that it came about.
Yeah,
it's amazing.
Yeah.
It's a lot of fun.
Nothing genius about it,
except that guy's performance.
Exactly.
As we start to wrap up here, I've been curious about asking folks, because we're in such a fun time for beer, but it's also such a crazy time for beer as well, with so much happening on every level of the industry. What's your hope for beer right now?
My hope for beer? That's a really good question. Yeah, there's too much. There's a lot of noise out there, and it's hard to know what's going on. I used to like we pretty much know every brewery that was in the U.S. and now like if I recognize a brewery, it's like, oh wow, good, I'm staying on top of it. I guess my hope for beer is that we have more. Well, so I really like how beer is becoming localized, and I think that's important. So every area has its own regional differences, and it makes it fun and exciting to travel and explore new beers.
Yeah.
So I hope a lot of breweries can keep a very regional focus and make their neighborhood and their state, their city, whatever, special because of it, and not all become national players. I think we've done that. We could contribute to that as well. I think, being in 30 states that we are.
Yeah.
I hope people continue to innovate, but also be respectful to the tradition of beer, and know your beer styles before you screw them up.
That's wise words. Patrick Roux, the founder, the CEO of the Bruery True.
Yep,
am I getting it right now? Okay.
Yep.
And the offshoot beer company, all out in California, with a location here in our nation's capital, Washington, D.C. You can learn more about Patrick's beers. You can read reviews from our expert panel at Craft Beer and Brewing Magazine by going to our website, beerandbrewing.com. There you can also subscribe to the magazine. If you have questions for me, guests you'd like to hear, or topics you'd like addressed, you can reach out to me at John Hall, JOHNHOLL, at beerandbrewing.com, or follow along the conversation on Twitter at John_Hall. Patrick, thanks again for doing this.
Thanks, John. It was fun.
Yeah, thanks so much. And people are out your way. They should definitely stop in and drink some beer.
Yeah, definitely.
And until then, we will be back next week with an all-new episode. Thanks so much for listening. Cheers.
River Drive Cooperage sources unique barrels from around the world. Working with select suppliers and their own cooperage, they ensure quality, consistency, and control over your barrel program. Custom oak alternatives, barrel aging consulting, and cooperage education are just a few more one-of-a-kind services they're proud to provide. River Drive Cooperage, not just a barrel company. Browse their online warehouse at barrelsdirect.com and use the coupon code PODCAST10, that's podcast with a number 10, to get 10% off your next order. This podcast is brought to you by Craft Beer and Brewing Magazine, for those that love to make and drink great beer. Learn more online or subscribe at beerandbrewing.com, or find us on social media at Craft Beer Brew.